yesterday sought to use the courts to stop you coming here today and to stop you rallying in support of mental health services. Just like previously with the general nurses, the Baillieu government thinks that it can abandon its responsibility to decent negotiations in favour of a legal strategy. The important thing for us is that we cannot allow that to happen, and it's fantastic to see you all here today. I know that some of you are here despite the employer saying you can't be here, so I want to thank you personally for your commitment and for your refusal to allow the government and allow the managers to intimidate you. What happened yesterday was that the Baillieu government made an application through, and they used the Victorian Hospitals Industrial Association as their stalking horse, so it's always the VHIA making the application, but I can tell you that it's funded by the government. They instruct Minter Ellison, the big law firm that sends along their QCs, and a conga line of other lawyers at about $5,000 a day for each of them to try and argue that you shouldn't have the right to stop work and come here today and direct the course of your campaign. What they sought yesterday was to have Fair Work Australia rule that our notified industrial action about overtime bans and about this statewide stoppage today is illegal. And the reason why and the reason how they were able to do that is because of a technicality within the law that says that when we vote on protected action, that protected action, once it's endorsed, has to be implemented within 30 days of the ballot being declared. Now, clearly, we were outside that timeline, only just, but nonetheless, it is a technical legal flaw that we have in our protected action to which they have sought to exploit. In order for us to proceed, we determined that a strategic withdrawal was best because we did not want orders made against us. So we gave them a commitment that we would declare this a statewide meeting as opposed to a stoppage and ask you to attend anyway, which you clearly have. However, many of our members have been held back at the workplace because many of the employers have simply refused to cooperate and give any support to those members in terms of attending today. So our numbers are down because of what occurred yesterday, but it's fantastic to see so many of you have turned out at any rate. And I know that many of you today have simply said, well, I'm going anyway, and you can do your worst. In terms of unprotected action, look, I don't want to elevate it in people's minds. Unions have been taking unprotected industrial action in this country for over 100 years. Yes! And we will continue to do so. Because what's fundamentally important is that you're able to work together, campaign together, and deliver outcomes together. You should never allow, bad laws and laws that don't work for workers to stop you from standing up for your rights. And I'm so proud that you're here today and you haven't allowed that to happen. What this union doesn't want to do is to get bogged down in the legal processes. So that's why yesterday we decided that it was best to not have orders declared against us, because then once the orders are in place against us, they can then go off to the federal court and seek to prosecute the union and tie us up in the courts for weeks and weeks and weeks. We believe that we are better off maintaining control of our campaign and not allowing the Baillieu government through the legal processes to control it for us. So what I'll be recommending to you today is that we do certain things to keep things going. Now, I know that many think that, maybe we're better off with a 24-hour strike. Maybe we're better off with a 12-hour strike. Let's bring it on. I think that we bring it on when we believe that it's strategically right to bring it on, and not when the Baillieu government is seeking to force us to bring it on. Because what they would like to see us bring it on straight away, because they would like nothing best to drag us off to the courts and have fines imposed against the union. Or they would like to see nothing more than it being declared illegal and then going to arbitration. Arbitration would be an absolute last recourse for us, because it will take months and months and months and months to be resolved, and that would mean that members would be missing out on determining sort of pay increases and getting those in place as soon as we possibly can. So I don't believe that arbitration at this point in time is the right way to go. So I think that what we need to do is to continue the public pressure, continue the pressure at the workplace, continue the bans that we have in place at the moment, and to make sure that they are working and that they are biting, and that we continue to organise to give the bosses the shits. So the resolution later on we will not be calling for our members to defy the laws at this point in time. We may need to do it later on, but I think we need to give the current negotiations a bit longer. We are in Fair Work Australia at the moment, working through the issues. Commissioner Gourley is giving us good assistance in terms of forcing the government to the table. Whilst I can't say to you we've had any major breakthroughs on any of the key issues, what I can say to you is that it's steadily getting close to the pointy end where the government will have no choice but to respond to the pressure that's being applied by Commissioner Gourley. But look, I think what we need to do today is we want to condemn this government about the resources that they're not prepared to put into our mental health services. The Baillieu government clearly has absolute contempt for our mental health services. They don't see that they are essential services for vulnerable Victorians, and we need today to send that message to the community on the steps of Parliament that we certainly see our services are absolutely fundamental to Victorians. They are not a government that cares about mental health. They do not care about quality patient services. They don't care about safe staffing levels. They don't care about reasonable outcomes, and they don't care about reasonable workloads for you. They simply seem not to care about mental health, and I think if you look at the budget yesterday, they only care about one thing, and that is having a headline budget surplus of $100+ million. And it's absolutely quite obscene that they believe that the best way to have so-called sustainable government is to slash and burn the public sector, health services, mental health services, education, and all of the public services that we need for a decent society. So what we're doing today on the steps of Parliament is saying to the Baillieu government, that's simply not good enough, and it's time that you invested into our mental health services. In terms of, I just want to very quickly go back to the negotiations. The negotiations at the minute are basically at the point where, you know, we haven't got a wages outcome. The government is still pressing for the 2.5%. Today, we don't want to make our rally about 2.5%. We don't want to make it about wages, we want to make it about quality. That's why Stephen said before, we're not doing the 2.5%, won't pay the rent, because we want to do it about quality services, about workload, about staffing, and about keeping people with mental illness safe. So the issue around the 2.5% is a key one for us, though. I have to be absolutely upfront with you that the agreement that the police, that the HSU East Branch and that the ANS struck are 2.5% deals. And it is going to be very difficult for us to get outcomes that are over and above that. We are looking to add to those outcomes, but I don't want people to go away today believing that this campaign has been made any easier by those outcomes, by the general nurses' outcomes or the police outcomes, despite what they say about the totality of those agreements. The bottom line is that those agreements are 2.5% per year for the next 4 years. Then they added some on top in terms of special payments and the like to bring them up and above the 2.5%. So I think ultimately the negotiations for us is going to have to be around some creative packaging of benefits in order to overcome the government's wages policy around 2.5%. I need to be absolutely upfront with you about that because that is the reality of the negotiations and where we're at the moment. The key sticking points, though, are obviously what the government wants. In return for anything around this, put aside 2.5, 2.7, 3%, 4%, whatever it is, what the government wants, though, is unacceptable to us. And we cannot agree to it. And the reason why we can't agree to it is because it will make your life worse in the workplace. What the government wants is to introduce short shifts of 4, 5, 6 hours to when people call in sick, so that they can decrease costs on a daily basis. We cannot accept that. They want to be able to redeploy you between shifts and during shifts. So if they're short in one place, they want to be able to redeploy staff to a different place on a daily basis or on a period basis, so for 2 weeks, 3 months and the like. They want to be able to flex down their current staffing profile. So if your beds in your inpatient unit are not full and people call in sick, they want to be able to not replace those people. We can't agree to that. What that would mean is that we're back to the days where, like we had out at Eastern Health a couple of years ago, where we had major disputes because we just simply could not keep people safe and we could not keep patients safe. So we can never agree to those things, and we will never agree to those in return for a wages outcome, no matter what they put on the table. On top of this, for those of you that have been around for a while, and I know there's still many of you in the workplace that, you know, our long-term, highly skilled psychiatric nurses and PSOs and PSENs who are on a commuted allowance, they want to take that away still. And it is just what that would mean for our long-term members who are stuck with these services is that it would mean thousands of dollars lost in income, particularly in terms of retirement income, because for those people, that commuted allowance is taken into account in terms of their superannuation funds, and that would be a major loss. We will never, ever agree to taking money away from people like that. We just simply can't. And on top of all of this, they now want to use, as I said before, they want to use the courts to scare us, intimidate us into submission by trying to take away your rights to try and undermine your industrial action and to undermine your campaign. I think they've undermined the strength of HACSU members. They've undermined the union strength. They've undermined your strength. They've undermined your resilience and your determination to get an outcome. We've fought for so many years to provide decent mental health services in this state. will continue to do so. I can only imagine what mental health services would be like in this state when I go interstate and look at New South Wales, when I go to Tasmania, when I go to South Australia and visit our branches there, and I talk to them about what their mental health services are like. All I can look back on is the 100-year history of HACSU and looking after mental health workers in this state and say, well, if it wasn't for our union, mental health in Victoria would be a lot worse than what it is. Despite all of the But history tells us dealing with Conservative governments is not easy. The last Kennett government, we went through mainstreaming and we campaigned for years, absolutely years, to stop the government cutting the guts out of the services and cutting the guts out of your terms and conditions. We were successful, but it took a long time and our members had to stick together. This is no different. We have been now campaigning for 8 months. We will probably need to campaign for a few more months. But I want your commitment today that we're ready to campaign for a few more months. We're ready to campaign for as long as it takes so that we can protect what we have and win some decent outcomes from this campaign. I hope that you're with me on that score. So today we want to demand that the Baillieu government commits to funding additional resources and commits to a decent pay outcome for you, our precious mental health workers who, if we don't pay you decent terms and conditions, how can we expect to keep you in the services and how can we expect to recruit and attract new entrants to our services? We demand that the government show the due respect that they owe to mental health clinicians and all mental health support staff for the difference that you make to the lives of people with a mental illness. We demand that the government start to fix the problems that they said that they would fix before the election. And finally, I think today is about putting them on notice that we won't be beaten, we won't go away, even though they use the courts, we will box smart, we will still be there, we will be putting back in place our bans. They won't be able to use the courts to undermine our campaign. We'll fight this campaign though on our terms, not on their terms, and we won't be sidetracked by the court action. We need to continue our campaign for better mental health for as long as we can, right up to the next election if required. And we need to educate all of our members who are back in the workplace and all of those that aren't our members. We need to be talking to them about, what's at stake here, what the government's trying to take away and what they're refusing to provide us in terms of safe staffing and workload and decent paying conditions. So I ask you all to go back today and just to educate your colleagues, to stick with us, to wear orange, to implement all of those non-clinical bans that we have in place. We need to make sure that those things are in place and giving the management the shits in the workplace. And we need to be sending a message to the government that we're only going to accept decent outcomes that improve our services, not decline our services. So look, I'll finish there before we put up a resolution, and I'll take some questions about where the negotiations are at and the